Hello, I'm Michael Redmond, professional 9-dango player. In this video, I'm going to look at a game between Honinbo Jowa and Inoue Gennan Inseki. We differentiate between the various leaders of the Inoue house by adding on their retirement name. So everyone who was a leader of the Inoue house or the Inoue school was called Inoue Inseki. But they did become Buddhists usually when they retired, and they added on a Buddhist name. So that's the Gennan part of his name. He was an exceptionally strong player. He wanted to be the Meijin, but you might say he lost to Jowa. Jowa became the Meijin instead. And then later in his life, after Jowa retired, Gennan still wanted to become Meijin. He lost to Honinbo Shuwa. And then he finally lost to Honinbo Shusaku in a set of games that included the famous air reddening game. So you might say he lost to who I would call the three strongest Honinbos in the history of Go. So maybe he was unlucky. He actually had a number of names. So he had 3 professional names, and so he changed his name about maybe 5 times. To talk about Honinbo Jowa, he was also an exceptionally strong player, and he did become the Meijin. At the time of this game, both players were heirs. So Gennan was the heir to the Inoue school, and Jowa was the heir to the Honinbo school. Jowa was known for his fighting style. He also played a lot of fantastic moves. So there's a Japanese word that is myoshu, and it means a spectacular move. The myo part of that can mean strange. And one might say there's something strange about these moves because they are usually not the normal shape. So they're an unusual, unexpected move. But when you see them on the board, it becomes apparent how effective they are. So there are moves that even professional players would usually not think to play, but extremely effective. So we're going to see some of those moves in this game also. At the time of this game, Honinbo Jowa was 34 years old, and Gennan Inseki was 23. Okay, we're seeing the beginning of the first fight, where white played the attachment here to try to cut black off. Let's just start the game. At this time in history, they were playing with no komi, so black does have an advantage here. In his games against Jowa especially, I think I see Gennan Inseki is trying to take the high ground and have a position where he can attack from. So I sort of connect that to black's choice of a 5-4 point, Takamoku in the upper left corner. At this time in history, the opening is getting fairly refined, but we do see a difference from modern Go in that white did not take the open corner at this point. So if you ask an AI, was probably a bad choice. And the pincer here was also a tactic that we see a lot in this era of Go playing, where modern games you would usually see white pressing here. So an opening something like this would be a modern opening. Playing here and playing an extension, which is also a pincer against black stone in the lower right corner, was supposed to be very effective. So white has a base on the right side while black starts to attack the black stone in the lower right corner. Black also played this pincer, where in a modern game he might have played the pressing move. In this case, actually, white will probably push through and cut, and it would start a big fight there. But again, we see the same kind of tactic where black has established a base on the bottom side while starting to attack white in the lower left here. And black extends here and then plays here. So black has made a good position in the top left. White has started to take away the base from this black group and upper right. And it's not really an emergency for black, but black does have to bear in mind that that group is not locally completely alive. So black starts an attack on the bottom side. And up to this point, this Inseki seems to have gone fairly well for black. Of course, black started with an advantage. And at this point, black has reinforced the group on the bottom side, and it's going to be difficult for white to connect the group on the left side with the group on the bottom side. So there's a bit of distance there. Black's going to be able to cut them apart and is hoping to set up a double attack. If we look at the areas controlled by the players, black has an area in the top left and an area in the lower left, which are solid enough to be called, I would call them territory, usually. So that's something like 30 points of territory for black. And white's territory is not completely defined yet, because the right side, there's various ways that black can attack it. So black could jump out here, black could play an attachment, black could slide. In modern Go, you often see black playing the attachment here in a double hane. So there's various ways black can attack this area, and it's not, I can't call it a white territory at this point. So white starts to try to attack black on the bottom side, so with this move. So this is the first point where we see a slightly unusual move, because you would usually expect the shape move to be here. In this case, after white 6, the target at K2 and the cut at L6 are Mii. So if black plays here, white will cut here. Or if black plays here, white will play here. So in this case, white would be getting a base on the bottom side, and black would be not completely alive. So there would be some potential to attack that black group. In this case, white would be getting a strong position in the center. So instead of playing this move, black played here, which looks like a kind of a clumsy move, but it's threatening to cut white off. With if white plays here, black can cut white off here. So after this, it would be difficult for white to try to live on the bottom side. And so this is going to be a good result for black. So white had to answer here, and black got to push through. However, if black captures the one stone, white can still play from above. And this exchange on the M line and this stone that black has captured on the K line, they're still useful for white. So if black plays away, white can still squeeze like this, and this would be good for white. So black has to continue dealing with that threat, and it makes this reasonably good for white. So black extended, and the first fight has started. So black's group on the bottom side, if black adds a stone, for instance here, black will have room to make 2 eyes. But he doesn't really want to be forced to do that, because he still has ideas that he wants to erase white's right side area. So playing a move like this and allowing white to play here, that would reinforce white's position on the right, and it's a move that black would rather not have to play. So he moves out, and of course he's attacking the 3 white stones. This is also a potentially weak group, and of course white's group on the left is not settled either. So there's 4 groups in this fight. So white moved out. White's still threatening to push through and cut at 04. And with this move, the right side is starting to look like it could become white territory. It's not completely finished off yet, but it's gradually getting difficult for black to try anything in the corner. And the fight on the outside continues. So this is where I think Gennan made his first mistake of the game. And he played here, which looks like a great move. It's getting rid of the wedge at the threat of the wedge at 06. So it's helping black's connection. And it's attacking white's connection. So it's threatening to cut here or here. And so white's going to have to add a stone there to defend that cut. So it looks like white's sort of unhappy in this variation. Let's just go back a few moves and show what black should have done. Is he, instead of this, he should have played the hane. So and this is the normal shape, and it was actually unusual that Gennan chose not to play this move. My guess is that he didn't want to help white connect up to the left side, but in this case it was more important to reinforce black's position in the center and then play here. So again, the players still had ideas that the right side was not a defined territory yet, But since the fight in the center is very important in this game, it was good for black just to play these forcing moves. This gets rid of the wedge here without reinforcing white in the center. Threatening to cover at R10, making Mei with that or N10. So if white answers on this side, black can cap here. And this starts to put some serious pressure on the white group. So if white can move out, but black also can start attacking on the other side. So black is threatening a double attack, maybe with something like D8 or D9. Move somewhere around here would cut off the two white groups, and white would not have two eyes on the bottom side. So this would be a very strong attack next. Black also has potential to push along the fourth line here and isolate white's group in the center. So black has potential to attack in this position. Otherwise, if white answers on this side, the other Mei was covering here. Once black gets to play at 9, there's a threat of a cut at R6. So white would eventually have to defend that, and black would have an advantage. Black would be able to win the fight on the right side. So this would connect black's two groups from the bottom side to the upper right, and black's group in the center would still be, the fight would continue there, so it wouldn't be completely wiped out. So this would be a good variation for black. In the game, he plays this move, and white found this move, which was a special move. So this was one of the myoshu that I was talking about. Definitely not the shape move. The shape move would usually be maybe an extension here or a hane here. But black would be able to move out, and this would be relatively easy for black with the threat of a cut at M7 still looming there. And there's also a threat of a cut at H9 later in the game. So white would be very busy in this fight. But this move, it changed that significantly. So for one thing, it's too late for black to try the hane here, because white will just cut. So black had to push his way out, and he cut here. So this is slightly painful to have to play this move, but at some point black's going to have to cut here. So say black played here and tried to move out immediately in the center. At some point, black is going to lose that stone at N9. So if black simply plays here and allows white to capture it, in this case, white did not have to add a stone at this point. If black connects here, this captures the black group in the center. So black can't do that. So black would have to cut here anyway. And so at some point, black is going to have to play that cut at 5. So the order was different from the diagram I was just showing, but the result is pretty much the same. Okay, so black moved out. If black had played elsewhere, he would eventually have to make a life for this group. So he didn't really want to play this move, which would establish white's territory in the corner when white answered it like this. So black moved out, and the fight continues. He took the time to extend here. So this is a threat against white's group on the bottom side. The black group on the right here, it has a lot of liberties. So in most cases, we can expect, if it turns into a semi between the two groups, these two groups that I've marked, let's take the mark off that stone. Usually black's going to win the race to capture. So he doesn't have to defend his group on the right as long as he's attacking the white group on the bottom side. And white answered it, and then black played here. He could have played the Tari. Maybe he was a bit wary of this variation. So he's emphasizing the idea of connecting out to the group in the upper right, which was also a bit weak. So the two black groups are connected now. Ah, yes. And this was another of Jowa's special moves. So this is actually better than playing the hane and extending, which would be a kind of a slow move. So by playing here, he got an extra forcing move here. Where black, if black tries to move out, this would actually be very dangerous for black because white has a forcing move here. And so in this case, white would be cutting off the group on the bottom side, and that would be bad for black. So even if black manages to live on the bottom side, this kind of fight would be painful. So black takes and white got a good shape here. So white is catching up at this point. The game is undecided. There's still a lot of groups that are still sort of weak. So black is starting to attack on the bottom side. This white group, it still doesn't have two eyes. And white starts to try to make eyes here. So white's going to play this move, and later is going to play down here to make some eye space for the white group. But black doesn't allow that. So black pushes through here, keeping the pressure on white's group. This exchange of this stone for this stone, it has weakened the eye space of the entire black group here, which is still not 100% alive. So white surrounds the black group, and black actually needs another move to be alive. So he has maybe one eye on the bottom side, so black can push through here, and this would make one eye there. And he can make a second eye in the top right area. So it's not as if it's going to die, but if black lets white play one more move here, then it becomes less sure. So there's some danger here. But black starts with this. So black is threatening to cut white off. So if white plays some other move, black can capture here and has a wedge here. So it's going to be a ko. So black started the ko, threatening to cut white off. And if white were to just simply connect here, everything would be connected, but white would lose a potential eye in this area. So in this case, white would not have that eye. And so he plays the ko. The interesting thing about this ko is that as the ko threats start on the top side becomes more and more important. So for instance, if black continues the ko immediately, white might capture here, and this would take away most of black's ko threats. So if black starts the ko, it's going to be difficult for black. So white can cut it in 4, or if black answers there, black's going to run out of ko threats. So allowing white to capture it 2 would just lose all the potential ko threats in that area, and that's why he continued pushing out. And again with this move, if black continues the ko immediately, white's push at k15 has cooled that part of the board down a bit, and it becomes more difficult for black to find enough effective ko threats. So for instance, 9 would not be good enough. This would probably be a winning variation for white. Something like this, where by winning the ko, white does have some extra breathing space for the white group, an extra potential eye at this point, and white does have one eye on the bottom side, so it's not going to die now. So this became a ko threat for white, so black extended, and white took the ko, and now the fight switches to the top side. And this is actually where the game was very close, but Jowa made a mistake with this move. So he probably should have played this way, which would have given white more eye space. So in this case, white would have some eye space here, and this group would be alive. It's actually very typical of Jowa to hesitate to play exchanges like 5 and 6. So this exchange allows black's group in the center to live. So it's the type of move that Jowa didn't like to play. He was hoping to kill this black group at some point in the game, maybe. So he didn't want to play that, and that could be a reason for him to avoid this variation. But this would have been the best variation for white. So it would still be a co-continuing, which would potentially kill just about everything on the bottom side. But black's in trouble on the top side too. And there's the issue of co-threats. So this would be undecided. In the game, the problem with this move is that it was weak in eye space. So when black plays here, this became an opportunity for white to finish the ko, but white's getting into a lot of trouble on the top side. So this is the killing move that takes away white's eye space. And black created a forcing move at M16, which is going to have something to do with the life or death of the black group. So for instance, if white continues with this move, the forcing move at 4 makes it possible for black to have 2 eyes. Of course, the issue of the cut at F17 has to be decided first. So white played here. White's trying to make eyes. White doesn't really have very much eye space. Yes. So this is the move that lost an easy win, where at this point black was winning the game if he had just simply played here, which would establish a life for black's group on the top side. And then here. So in this position, white does have a potential eye at this point. So either here or here, white does have a potential eye. So white needs to get an eye with Sente on the top. So that happened. So white did get an eye there and can make an eye like this. So this is actually, if black chooses to play the ko, it would be a ko with black playing like this. Although maybe black doesn't even need to play that ko. So if black simply plays here, and the point is that these 3 stones had to do with the life or death of the entire black group. So black, with this attack, it was good enough for black to finish with Sente and have some territory there while making eyes for the black group. And this would be a win for black if black gets to play at 17. So this was the relatively easy way to win. Black was several points ahead. So like even in a komi game, black would have chances to win. But with no komi, it's definitely a win for black. So when black played here, this was similar to the previous variation, but there was an extra ko in the top left also. So white had, let's just show the diagram. So white had one eye at F16, but also a kind of a ko for the eye at G15. So this is a point where Gennan made one more mistake, and he still had a winning position. So the best way to play was probably to connect here, which would keep that ko, and it would keep some pressure on the white group. And it would also stop white from pushing through at D14. So in the game, black played here, and white got to push through here, which complicated things a great deal. It also created some ko threats for white in the corner. So let's start with black connecting here and show why that's no good. So white will push through here. And the eye at M7, it does depend on a ko. But the fact that black's corner is in danger means that white's not going to have any trouble winning that ko. So that's not a ko that's dangerous for white. In fact, black's not even going to try it. So this is a variation I worked out with Katago, and it's a very close game. So white's going to fight the ko here. The thing is that white has an advantage in ko threats. Because the black corner in the top left is isolated, there's a black group on the top side that gives some ko threats to white. So white has an advantage in ko threats, and so it white doesn't really have to worry about the ko at black throwing in at L8, which would lose some points when black loses the ko. Black doesn't have any good ko threats for that ko. And even white's going to win the ko on the bottom side too. So this would be a very close game, undecided, I would call it. Okay, so to get back to black's best variation, black plays here. And this would be a relatively simple endgame, where black does have to be careful about the life or death of this group on the right, but will be okay once he pushes through at 11. And black is going to get some profit on the side here, so maybe capturing this one stone, because the white group is not really connected out. So this would be a win for black. Establishing this territory here was a part of the recipe for black to win. So in the game, black pushed through here immediately, and white got to break through here, which was very big as far as territory was concerned. And it's going to create some complications with black's group in the top left corner. So what black was doing in the meanwhile was black was trying to build a territory here and still potentially has chances to win. So white has started to attack this black group. Black can still live, but the game could get fairly close. So black plays here. So this is defending the top left corner and taking away some extra eye space from white. And so there's this ko here, where white has to win the ko to make a second eye at g15, and actually answers this ko threat. So at this point, white doesn't have a potential eye here anymore. But white has some ko threats against the corner. So this is a point where Gan just connected here. And after this, it starts to look promising for white, because after this, white's going to have some ko threats against the upper left corner, and it starts to get problematic. So this is a point where black should have started with the upper right corner. So an attempt to make two eyes. The upper left corner, it's going to survive. So in the process, maybe white's going to get an eye on the left side there, or can capture the ko at d17. So there's some potential profit for white there with a potential eye in the equation. But as far as territory is concerned, it's not as important as the top right, and also the top right has to do with black's eyes. So this is a branching point where white could simply play here, and this would allow black to live. So in this variation, black has an eye with sente in the top right, and a potential eye on the bottom side. So black's going to be able to live. White's going to be able to live too. So in this variation, black has kept this territory and seems to have a small lead, a few points. Otherwise, if white wants to be more aggressive, white can try to take away black's eyes with this move. And this actually, it does work to a certain degree, but it's going to give black a lot of ko threats. So in this case, black can play the ko. And so just an example of the ko fight here. And so, yes, so it's a interesting fight here where with 40, white is keeping the pressure on black's group. But eventually black's going to be able to live with ko threats. So actually in the process of the ko, black got a potential throw in here to make eyes here, and also has a potential eye here. So black is going to have no trouble making two eyes. And this looks like it's going to be a win for black. So connecting here, it lost the opportunity to play this probing move, which was asking to be allowed to live in the top right corner. Just to point out this ko threat, white is threatening to play here, and then this would be a forcing move. So this is threatening a16 next, and connecting here would actually give white an eye on the left side. So if black tries to take away that eye, black's going to run out of liberties, and white's going to get an eye there. So black had to answer that move, and white had plenty of ko threats in the top left corner. So black ended up having to play this move, which is a painful ko threat. So at this point, black has to win the ko to be alive. This whole black group here, it hasn't established two eyes yet. And white has a good number of ko threats, but it suffices for white to live on the left side. So that's what we're going to see in the end. So white played here and here, making a living shape. So at this point, white has won already, but black did not resign. So finally, it's just an endgame, and we can follow the endgame moves to the end. This was a castle game, so it was an important game, which helped to establish Jowa's bid for Meijin later in his life, that is. And White won by 12 points. I actually did make a video of this game just playing out the moves. So those of you who would like to see it actually being played on a Go board, there's a video of me doing that. So I'll add a link for that one too. Thank you for watching to the end, and see you next time.